Hello, my name is Elizabeth Spence. Welcome to Elevating Empowering Conversations, hosted by I Declare the Word, a magazine created to inspire, encourage, motivate the lives of others. Also includes topics of interest, daily declarations, and life quotes to read. I will tell you a little bit about Elevating Empowering Conversations after I introduce the ladies that are part of this platform. We have Annette McGee,
Hello.
Rochelle Williams,
Hello.
and Tyrus Akins.
Hello.
And thank you, ladies, for being part of this new journey. Now, our focus is to encourage, empower, and educate people to see life situations from multiple viewpoints and be open-minded. Having a conversation with a desire to learn, deepen your understanding, and strengthen to become a better version of you. Now, today, we will have a conversation about grief and loss, a sensitive and tough subject to discuss. So many have been affected through death of loved ones, friends, loss due to life circumstances. Society as a whole is currently trying to cope with grief and navigate through this intense process. We're having a conversation and dialogue about grief, no counseling, treatment, or diagnosis. We're having this conversation because it is needed. So many mass murders, killings have taken place since the beginning of the year, and we really need to discuss grief and what grief is and how it affects others and what we need to do to identify with it. So we're having an open discussion based on learned information and personal experiences with grief. And then we will also have resources that's listed at the end. So first, let's talk about what is grief and loss. So the definition according to CDC mental health is that grief is a normal response to loss during or after a disaster or traumatic event. Grief can happen in response to loss of life, as well as a dramatic change, daily routines and ways of life that will usually bring us comfort and feeling of stability. Now, also too, it's an emotional suffering that you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. And I think we all can identify with that. Often the pain of loss can feel overwhelming, and you may experience all kinds of difficult or anger or disbelief, or you may even feel guilt, and it will have a profound sadness that will rest upon you. The pain of grief can also disrupt your physical health, making it difficult to sleep or even think straight. So coping with loss of a loved one or someone or something that you have lost can become one of life's biggest challenges. You may associate grieving with the death of a loved one, but also we want to talk about the second part, what other circumstances of loss can cause grief. And based on this list that I have, divorce, relationship breakup, loss of health, losing a job, loss of financial stability, miscarriage, retirement, death of a pet, loss of a cherished dream, loved one's serious illness, loss of a friendship, selling a family home. All these subtle losses in life can trigger a sense of grief. For example, you might grieve after moving away from home, graduating from college, or changing jobs. So this is just a few items that are listed. So ladies, I think that we all can identify to some of these different circumstances of loss that can cause grief. So I would like for you guys to chime in.
I can relate to that. Growing up without having my father in my life, to me, that was a big loss. And as a woman today at 53 years old, it's like a part of me was like gone. I mean, not being able to spend time, not growing up with my father, being around other people that always talk about, their dads. And at the age we are now, some women still say they're daddy's girls. So things like that bothered me. And it was just, it was a loss not growing up with my father.
Right. I
I
can
guess,
only imagine.
yeah. There are so many things that you named that I can relate to. Definitely the relationship breakup, death, retirement, all of those things have affected me, or I have experienced grief as a result of those things. Um, Loss of my mom, retiring from my job, definitely.
Yeah, so that can, be traumatic. And what about you, Tyrus?
Like them, with so many of that you named, I could relate to. But the ones I will talk about are the loss of loved ones. I lost my mom in 2018. Then, right in 2020, I lost my aunt, and they were very close, and we all were very close. So the two people in the family who were the closest to us went on away, and that was very, very hard. Um, Gone through grief of not having my father for a short time in my life. Um, Him, maybe saying that he was going to come and not show up, and that really hurt. And I remember telling my grandfather about it, and my grandfather told my aunt, who discussed it with my father. And because I had strong-willed women in my life, independent women in my life, he thought that I was okay, But after we talked about it and got that straight, God really blessed our relationship, and we're really close now, and um, we talk anytime. And then relationship, been through, relationship grief where, I felt a lot of anger, a lot of depression, um, denying myself, like, I can't believe this is going on. So those are the type of things I went through with grief.
Right. Yeah. So that it sounds like we all can identify, I can really speak on some of the things on the list, losing a pet, because we had two pets, Bentley and Queenie, a Yorkshire Terrier and a boxer. So it was like having children, like you lost your children, So that was a loss, and that was a sadness for me to, experience it. And then I think one of the major traumatic things that really affected me was death, far as me being able to experience it at a young age. When I was around 12, I would say 11 or 12, when my brother was shot 5 times, he was killed. That was traumatic because I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't understand what was going on at the time. So that there was something that I really had to cope with. And my father telling me and trying to talk to me, it was like I was not comprehending anything. I felt like I was in a daze, what is going on? And that really, took a toll on me. And then later on, I was in the military and everything. And my friend who I was close to, she was murdered and she was killed too. So I'm saying to myself, it seemed like anyone close to me, it seemed like something tragic will happen to them. And that's the mindset that I had at the time, and then experiencing when my father passed away, you know, and then my mother-in-law died of cancer, just being part of that process that someone is really sick and you see what they go through. That was traumatic, you know. So I will say yes, death was the major one for me because the way the people who was close to me, how the death was kind of like horrific, you know, it was, you know, a terrible death. So therefore, you know, that took a toll on me. But, you know, with that being said, now we're going to go into the part that first I want to say is that we have to keep in mind that whatever loss, whatever your loss is personal to you. So we don't need to feel ashamed about how we feel or believe that somehow it's only appropriate to grieve on certain things. Because by me doing research on this, it educated me. We always associate grief with death, but any type of loss can be considered grief. And we don't never really associate it with that. We always associate it with death. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, that everyone who grieves, it may be something different, but it's very important to them. And we have to respect that and be sensitive to them, and just know that sadness will occur and that they just have to learn and go through their process. And then the next part, or should I say the next question is, how did grief affect you?
For me, I believe, you know, like I said, growing up as a child without my dad, and then when I did get in touch with him and started trying to have a relationship and communicate with him, I found myself feeling a little bitter. And if he would say something that I didn't like pertaining to, you know, whatever his opinion of whatever he thought about whatever was going on at that particular time, I would find myself withdrawing from him. And, you know, sometimes I would be sad. And then, you know, I had to pray and ask the Lord, you know, take that feeling away, take that pain away, because I still want to honor him. He's still my dad, even though he did not raise me, but I still wanted that relationship. So I just found myself being sad a lot of times, even when I did hear his voice or, you know, on the phone talking to him. And even when I went to see him, it was different. It was different. Like I had so many questions like, why, you know, but as I'm older now, I've gotten past that, but still, you know, it's still a part of me that misses that relationship of having my dad.
I think during the time that I was dealing with the loss of my mom, I was also trying to figure out my life because I was now retired. So how I felt pretty much when my mom passed away, of course, it was definitely sad, but we had a lot of time together, a lot of time to talk, and we resolved a lot of things. And when she passed away, my mom, I know she was a Christian woman, and, you know, I know she was going to be at peace. She didn't, she wasn't suffering, she wasn't in pain when she passed, but she just, you know, went to sleep one day, and 5 days later, she took her last breath. But she, you know, so during the time that we were actually, when she was still alive, I grieved more, it seems like, when she was alive than I did after she passed, because it was sad watching her. I don't want to say deteriorate, but that's kind of like what happened, you know. So, but she passed away about 2 months after I retired. I retired to take care of her, to make taking care of her easier, because it was hard working a full-time job, 40 hours a week, and caring for her 24 hours a day when I was home, and, you know, 7 days a week, because I also care for her on the weekends. So when she passed away, I didn't sleep well. She passed away in the home, and going past her room at night, you know, it always left me a little leery. So I would try to stay up as long as I could, so that when I did walk past the room and go to bed, I would fall right off to sleep, instead of just listening to a quiet home. A lot of times, you know, you're hearing her move around or call your name for something, and late at night. And when it was just no one, that kind of like made me, you know, I had a lot of sleeplessness. I also felt a lot of numbness. I couldn't relate to my emotional feelings at the time. So, if people asked, how are you feeling? I could pretty much say, I'm okay. I really don't know how I feel. Different days, I felt different things. So I had a little bit of numbness, a little sleeplessness. I'm not working anymore, not having that 40-hour responsibility throughout my day, 5 days a week. That made me have a sense of purposelessness. Caregiving was purposeful. There's a lot to do with caregiving, taking care of my mom, being concerned about her medicines, cooking, cleaning her, taking care of the beds, the laundry, everything, as well as working. I had purpose. I had a sense of purpose. So basically, right at the same time, both of those things were no longer part of my life. So I kind of felt like the rug was pulled from under me. It's like, what do I do? What do I do with myself? So it took a little time, definitely through prayer, and then just realizing, this is it. This is how it's going to be. Unfortunately, the pandemic came like 2 months later after her passing. So basically, everybody's shut down, everybody's isolated in their homes, and I lived alone. So of course I'm isolated in my home as well. So it gave me a lot of time to think about things and try to figure out what I would like to do, but was kept from doing it due to the pandemic. But I got, through it. And by the time pandemic was over, definitely better, definitely have way too much to do now because I still keep my schedule pretty full. But yeah, that was mostly it. Sleeplessness, numbness, probably eating too much as well.
What about you, Tyrus?
Mine was also sadness and just a lot of feeling of hopelessness when I lost, especially when I lost my aunt, my mom first, and my aunt. And I was just thinking as Annette was talking, even before my mom passed, my mom's she had to end up getting her legs amputated. And I really, really went through grief with that. Just not being able to help her, to see what else we could have done to keep her from getting her legs amputated, that really, really took me through a lot. Mm. And so, and then my aunt, she went through depression. She went through Alzheimer's. And with her going through Alzheimer's, a lot of restless nights because I didn't sleep in my bed. I wouldn't sleep in my bed. I slept on the sofa because the sofa was near the door, and I didn't want her to leave out the house because I heard, different stories about people with dementia, Alzheimer's, leaving out of the house and, people finding them. And I slept a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of uncomfortable sleepless nights on the sofa, and making sure that, she was fine. And the next thing with the relationship, I remember being in a relationship a while ago, and I was just so depressed and so sad. And I remember one morning, God said, "Get up." And then he said, "You wallowed in this long enough. You have work to do." And when I heard that, I just got up and I said, "Okay, God, I'm ready. Whatever it is that you want me to do, I'm ready." So going through all of that, which is also growth and what you go through, I'm so grateful now that even I went through it because it taught me a lot. It taught me how to deal with grief, how to be able to hold on to God when I needed him.
Mhm.
Okay, so it seems like all of us can identify, or it affected us in different ways. I can say how it affected me. Well, with my pets, that did affect me because those was my babies there, Bentley and Queenie. The two dogs, the big dog and the little one. But then, far as death with my brother, that was very traumatic. That affected my sleep big time. I could not sleep. I was feeling so many different emotions. I didn't understand what I was feeling. I felt angry, numb, I probably had depression going on and didn't realize it, but it was just so many different things. And I remember my mom and dad used to try to talk to me, and it was like I wasn't hearing it because I was angry because of how it happened. Why did it happen? He brought me my first bicycle. I was like, what is going on? And then with my friend, that made me angry too, because I'm like, why? She was murdered and everything. She was a good person and all. So the different negative things, and then with my mother-in-law with the cancer and everything and how it really affected her, I was like, oh my goodness, just seeing her go through that was something. But my father, I grieve, but he died peacefully in his sleep. But I think one of the major deaths that really affected me, but this affected me in a positive way, was the transitioning of my mother. Because if I had not been in that room to experience myself, then my mom had dementia and she had to have her leg amputated. They wanted to take it from the knee down, but they ended up taking it way above the thigh. So I remember when I went to go visit and I was in the room with her, that woman did not flinch. I just felt the peace of God. When I would go and come back, I would talk to the nurse and I said, well, how my mom doing? She's doing fine. I mean, no type of, if she was in pain, I didn't know she was in pain, but it was just a peacefulness that was on her that was so amazing. It made me feel peaceful.
Mhm.
And then she never opened her eyes except one time, the day that she passed away. She opened her eyes up and looked at me. I said, Mom, do you know who I am? She said, yes, you're my daughter, Elizabeth. And she said, I love you. And I said, I love you. That touched my heart in a positive way. Don't get me wrong, I miss my mom, but that was such a peaceful transition. She didn't moan, she didn't groan or nothing. It was just the peacefulness. She smiled and closed her eyes, and that was the last time that she opened her eyes. And then a couple hours later, she ended up passing away. But that affected me in a positive way. And God showed me something through that transition, the peacefulness. And that's something I will never forget, because all the other deaths that I experienced with people who was close to me was so negative and so traumatic. But that particular time, that was very peaceful. And I felt at peace the first time that I can actually say, far as somebody who was close to me who had passed away besides my father, but this was different. Just being in there, because of the fact that the amputation, normally if somebody have a limb removed or something, you're going to feel some type of pain. And I'm not saying she didn't, but it was just amazing. This woman just didn't do anything. It was just like God was just in the midst of it. And it just really amazed me how she was just so peaceful. And that just really affected me, that particular situation, in a positive way. So I think that we all can, identify how it affected us, the numbness, the anger, and all. When I look back, I had to go through my process. All of us had to go through that process. But, we have to keep in mind that even though we go through that process, also recognize when we might, need to get help if needed. But with that being said, ladies, I would like for you to leave some encouraging words to the audience, since we have been talking about a real difficult subject and really, expressing what we felt like or what we went through. So what would be your encouraging words to the audience?
I would say it's okay to grieve. No one can tell you how long. It is a process. Um, you can get through it through prayer, also professional help. It's okay if you have a close friend that, you can sit down and talk to. Because sometimes, you just need somebody, there to listen, somebody to just, listen to how you feeling. And then, you don't want to continue to stay in that place. You do want to move forward, especially if it's, preventing you from moving ahead in your life. So I would say, don't stay there too long. At some point you got to get up and let it go, because you can't bring that person back, or you can't change what happened or the situation. So you have to move forward.
That's true.
Well, basically what Rochelle said. Yeah, different relationships and different losses will affect each and every person differently. And again, people can't tell you how to grieve, how long to grieve, but it definitely can affect maybe how you live your life or how you go forward. And if you have children or other family members that are here that need you, you want to make sure you kind of like find some type of help to help you get through it if it's affecting those other relationships with other people. There's, spiritual help. Maybe if you're in church, you can talk to your pastor. There's professional help, of course, friends who have passed, who've had situations in their life where someone has passed and they went through grief and gotten over it. Maybe those are people to talk to help you get through. Don't try to suffer it alone. If it's really affecting you in such a way, talk to somebody. Talking it out helps a lot. I have friends who's like grief or bereavement counselors, and knowing that, talking with them, gave me pointers. Sometimes they helped me even identify what I was feeling. So I would say, if you're affected in such a way that you're not functioning well, seek help for sure, in whatever capacity that may be for you.
And I'm going to piggyback off on the both of them. Yes, seek that help. Sometimes you may not want a lot of help. You may just want to be alone. It's so good to have someone, even if you just have them to just sit there with you, to just be in the presence with them. Of course, seek God, and let him help you in what you're going through. And think about some things you used to do before you even went through the grief. What type of things did you do in your life? For example, I like going shopping. Will shopping help you? I mean, we don't want you to spend all your money, but will shopping help you? Will playing games help you? Will exercise help you? Something that's different from what you're doing now while you're sitting there in the grief. Just do something different. Just think about some things that make you happy. Going to church makes me happy. Praising the Lord makes me happy. That's what I love doing. And so I'm a dance minister. I love dancing. That makes me happy. So do some things that make you happy. I went through the things I went through. Dance took me through it. I danced my way out of it. So that's my suggestion.
All right, ladies, thank you for the suggestions. And I would just say, I agree with, what a lot of you guys were speaking on, especially about the process. And then Annette, you touched bases on saying it really depends on the type of loss, that determines how it will affect you. Just like what I was talking about death, in the negative, because that's how it affected me because of the way it happened. And we just have to be able to know when we do need to speak to someone. And then those, we say go to God. Maybe some people don't understand about going to God, but go to someone you trust who will give you wise counsel, who will be able to help you through the process. So there's so many different resources out there. And in fact, I won't talk about all of them now because that's going into the next part too. But just to let you know, tonight, two of the resources was CDC mental health. So if you go on that particular website, it'll have the category of grief and you can look up information. And then the help guide is another one that you can go to. It's a nonprofit guide to mental health and wellness. So those are two entities that you can go to and be able just to, look up information and see what's out there. And do not be ashamed to speak on it because sometimes we need to release. We need to talk about it. And that helps us to heal. There's a healing process, a deliverance process, and a restoration process too. So we just have to keep that in mind. And I thank you, ladies, for joining in tonight on Elevating Empowering Conversations. Thank you so much. And I'm going to say good night, but we will be back again for part 2. And part 2 will talk about how we are going to, this time for part 2, we're going to talk about coping with grief and how we can help others who are grieving. How can we help them through the grieving process? And then we're going to go over different resources that are available. We're going to go more in depth about that. So I think you guys should enjoy it, and prayerfully you enjoy this, this topic that we discussed about grief. And I pray that everyone has a wonderful night, and we will see you again. And we just say, have a great evening.